Hello, my name is Victor Oguyinka. You're welcome to Vanguard Live. Aftermath of the incident, a very disastrous one that happened yesterday at ITAFAJI, Lagos Island, where a 3-story building collapsed and a lot of persons feared dead and many others injured. And of course, some others are still trapped in the building as we speak, although lots of rescue exercises going on by members of LASEMA and other agencies to ensure that those people are brought out. But that is not the first time we are going to be hearing about a building collapse, particularly on that street. It's about a year, according to residents, that another building collapsed about the same time and lots of people died. Needless to say that other ones have happened in other parts of Lagos and indeed some other parts of Nigeria. But the question everybody keep asking is, when will this end? How long are we going to continue living in a building that can't sustain life? Well, with me here today is somebody that is well spent and has been head of many committees in ensuring that the right things are being done, in ensuring that buildings stand when they stand. I have with me Dr. Bumi Ajayi. You're welcome, sir.
A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, you've heard what happened yesterday about the collapsed building on the island.
Yes.
How did you take it? Of course, that's not the first time you're hearing about such.
Yeah, building or structures will continue to collapse all over the world.
Okay, I was hoping you would say all over the world.
Yes, at various times and for various reasons. So that a building collapses, it's one of those. There are nothing called mistakes there. That word will not exist in English language. But the most important is that there are avoidable collapses.
Okay.
Like the case, like this one.
What do you mean by avoidable?
That is, if we have done things right, it doesn't have to collapse.
Okay.
You don't have to wait till now, allow it to collapse. That's crying.
Looking at that particular building, we understand that that building has been marked for demolition twice, and then on 2 occasions it has been bypassed.
You see, that is even a minor matter. More than 10 years ago, the Town Planning Office has gone around Lagos to mark distressed, what they call distressed buildings, and mark them for demolition. I think at that time, if I can recall very well, I think there are about 228 buildings or so that were marked for demolition.
In the whole of Lagos?
The whole of Lagos. And I don't know whether I don't know why they carried out demolition on 10 of them. So, in as much as you disrespect professional opinion and advice, you have to live with the consequences of that disrespect.
Okay,
which is what has happened in this case.
Let us take a break from ITAFAJI. Okay. You have been head of committees.
Yeah,
I
was the one that was the chairman of the committee that investigated the collapse of the church, synagogue. Mm-hmm. I was the chairman of the committee that investigated Lekki Gardens collapse. I equally happened to have been appointed as the chairman of the committee for the reorganization of lab-scale and material testing laboratory in Lagos. So technically, I'm fairly exposed to the realities of issues related to collapse.
We are interested in those realities because if we continue to set up committees on collapsed buildings and in the end it looks like some of the recommendations that the committee is giving them is not being taken seriously, then we don't know the next building that is going down. Out of the 228 you mentioned, okay, and maybe some other ones have even added to that number. So what are some of those recommendations you always give to the authority?
You see, let me say something for the avoidance of doubt of everybody. The experience you gain from every collapse is different.
Okay.
Which means you must investigate every collapse to know exactly what are the critical issues, what are caused the collapse. Mm-hmm. Generally, if we want just to comment, or even before we start investigation, we want to investigate, is it the foundation that failed? Is it the structures that failed? Is it all sorts of? We just question a lot of things. It is when we now do the investigation that you now get to the real answer. So let me say that every collapse must be investigated.
How long does it take to investigate a collapse?
It depends. It depends on a lot of factors. You might guess before you even start, we think that by the nature of this collapse, it is the foundation that failed. And by the time you look at the foundation, you discover that the foundation didn't fail. Then you must go to something else. Okay? Because any building, any structure has its set pattern. So you might be lucky, you can be dead right on your suspicion.
Okay, Dr. Ajayi.
But don't let us go that way. Let us face the realities that we have in our hand.
Because what we have here today that we are talking about, we are looking at what actually went down, and I'm glad you mentioned that every building collapse has its own peculiarity. But I'm going to ask you this, because most of the time we point accusing finger at the government. Because we expected that for us to have the building, we must have gone through some procedures that government is involved in. Is it fair to hold government responsible for every collapse?
Ultimately, yes. Okay. Ultimately. And the reason why I said ultimately is that it is government that has the power of eminent domain. And what that power of eminent domain does is the government can say, I have acquired this your property. All that the law says is that the government should pay you compensation. So what is the problem of government from being able to demolish buildings that have been identified as distressed? Especially, it is government itself, that's the town planning office, it's government that went about doing that report, even before LAPSCA was created. So, if government sent its officers go and do an evaluation of buildings, they came back with a report, and government itself, who has the power to implement, they implement. So whom do you blame ultimately? But now we are back to your usual Nigerian factor. They come to meet somebody in the National Assembly, they go to somebody in the House of Assembly, they go to the traditional ruler, they go to the ITAFAJI of Lagos, they go to everybody, and then the government cannot function. So, in as much as we keep on disobeying professional advice, in as much as we have resolved not to run this country with knowledge, but run it with your religious affiliation or tribal affiliation, we are going nowhere as a nation.
I'm interested. Those committees, when they are being set up, is it by the government also?
Yeah. I mean, the one I headed that the structural LAPSCA and material testing laboratory was set up by government.
When you are sure that you are setting up a committee for a recommendation on way forward, and in the end they don't take it, do you have an agreement, a gentleman agreement from the beginning that we are going to head this committee on the condition that what we tell you to do, you are going to do?
No, you see, you don't have that type of agreement, but what you would think that's the most sensible thing to do. Why would you set up a highly technical committee of highly qualified, experienced, and competent people, and you're not ready to listen to them? So I'm telling you, we have resolved that we are not running this nation with knowledge. So let us continue to run it with our religion. When the building collapsed, did you ask anybody whether I was a Christian or Muslim? Did you ask anybody whether I was Yoruba, Igbo, or Hausa? So, in as much as we have resolved that we're going to run this nation based on some stupid criteria that doesn't mean anything to anybody, then we're going to get these results.
Okay, things like this, we count on your expertise, your experience.
Yes, and you give it to them, and they disobey it.
And to continue to put pressure on those people.
Yes.
I was there yesterday. You are a town planner. Have you been there? Of course,
yes.
Lagos Island.
Oh, yes.
They have a unique, building designs. That building that collapsed had about 3 other buildings, not a bungalow, 3 other buildings that were standing on something less than a plot of land. And that is how that pattern is.
Let me tell you, you see, it is the inheritance structure that led to those type of letter I structures you find. The original Baba who built the land, built the building, they didn't build that. When the children inherited, people from the same mother or the same root or whatever it is, they divide the land, and so everybody now has a small piece of the land, and I decided to put a structure that's a letter I. That's how those buildings came about. But you see, to me, we are right from this issue of the building. Lagos Island, first and foremost, is a swamp. The land originally is swampy, and therefore you cannot just do any ordinary foundation before you start building a house on on Lagos Island. And at the time, most of these buildings are already very old. Most of the buildings there will probably be 50 years old. Okay, and at the time they built it, I don't think many of them built on piles. So, you know, everything that they did for today, those buildings have outlived their usefulness. They have outlived their useful lives. And they have already been distressed. And they have been identified as distressed. And they also have been removed a long time ago. So when you refuse to remove them, they remove themselves.
Doctor, I was there yesterday. I spoke with some residents, and it looks like a general opinion that they don't mind if government comes to destroy those buildings as long as it guarantees safety of life.
Because they had a crisis in their hands. That's why they agreed.
So is it now not is it out of place for us to consider going there and having a mass demolition, as it were? Because it becomes a general problem for the other part of the world.
It's not you and me that will take that decision. It's the government, and we're all government.
The government is listening.
Yes. Would they act? That's a different question. They're listening. They're hearing.
Okay.
Would they act?
Before we continue, I'm here with Dr. Bunmi Ajayi, the town planner, and of course very experienced when it comes to analysis and head of many committees on collapsed buildings and everything. We are discussing what happened at ITAFAJI, and lot of people have been saying different things about this, and government is being held accountable for most of those demolition. Okay, so we are actually going to continue. Of course, people have been bringing their comments in, and we are going to be taking those comments very shortly. But then again, I want us to look at this very critically. In Nigeria, we have building collapses. Of course, the president, the governor had lent their voice on this. But we've had other disasters in other parts of the world. And we saw that the way they react to these things are pretty different from what we have here. When we have things like this, how exactly should we, as a people, react to this?
In terms of what? You see, thank God that this thing happened in Lagos. Because one has to be fair to the Lagos state government. At least has set up all these various outfits to deal with emergencies. Most states, even their fire brigade offices are not working. Not their vehicles, even their offices are not working. So talk less of their vehicles. So whom are you going to call when it happens like this? You are at the mercy of your neighbors. That's all. Because they don't have the institutional structure. They don't have the machinery. They don't have anything. But one should give it to Lagos state government that at least they have all these institutional structures that rose to the occasion, and they have instruments and things like that. And thank God again that it was a case in which their neighbors came to the rescue of some people.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All those things we give to the Lagos state. But you see, the thing is that in other parts of the world, these things are standard equipment. People are already being educated about what to do when there's an emergency. They tell you what to do when there is fire. They educate right from primary school. We ought to have been educating all these children How do you react when there's a fire outbreak? What do you do when there is this? So they will go and educate their mother at home and their father at home. These children can be very interesting when they want to teach you at home. So there must be a course on emergency situations which they should do. I know a lot of organizations, they have what they call health and safety.
Okay. Yeah.
And the companies that takes it and it's serious most in this country are multinationals.
Okay.
Most of our Nigerian companies don't take health and safety serious.
Yeah, we are going to connect with somebody, an architect, architect Abimbola Ajayi. She's a past chairman of the Lagos State, chapter of the Nigerian Institute of Architects and all this. We are actually going to hear, what she has to say on this issue. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, you are welcome to Vanguard Live.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we are discussing what happened yesterday at ITAFAJI, Lagos Island.
Yes.
You heard that news, and as an architect, what came to your mind?
Well, as an architect, the first thing that came to my mind is this has happened another time, and it is so sad because what is happening in the built environment in Nigeria and Lagos in particular is totally avoidable. It's a different thing if it's unavoidable. But all these buildings collapsing, they are totally avoidable.
Okay, we're talking about avoidability and it keeps occurring. Please, who is not doing the right thing? Is it the resident? Is it the landlord? Is it the government? Well, somebody has to be responsible for all this collapse.
You're right, somebody has to be responsible. When I was the chairman of Lagos State chapter of the Nigerians of Architects, I was privileged to be part of a technical committee that the government set up at that time, headed by General Rees. We were to set up a policy on urban and regional planning development law, which was also enacted in 2010. And after that, I had the opportunity to serve the former governor of Lagos State, His Excellency BRF Fashola. Okay, and at that time we came up, we got a lot of observations, and we came up with recommendations, and we found out, to be honest with you, that this problem is the fault of everybody.
By everybody, what do you mean everybody?
Everybody, because we found out that from our observations and findings, we found out that there are provisions in the laws that regulate the industry to be adequate. But there's weak implementation by relevant government agencies. There's flagrant abuse and deliberate flouting of these laws by the public. There's indiscipline amongst everybody and corruption by all and sundry, and they have rendered these laws ineffective.
Okay. Talking about corruption.
So it has to do with everybody, including the professionals, the public, the government agencies. Because if we do what we're supposed to do, this thing will not happen. That's why I said that it's totally avoidable, and it's unfortunate and sad.
Okay, you mentioned corruption,
Yes.
as one of the factors contributing to this malady. That building had been marked twice for demolition.
Well, you see, unfortunately, you find out that what has happened is that even the government agencies that go about marking all these buildings, they have made a mockery of this implementation or this enforcement, because you just go there. Sometimes what we discovered actually is that some of these agencies they go there once the building has collapsed and they quickly mark the thing. They don't even mark it before, because one of the strong recommendations that we did at that time. Are you listening to me?
Yes,
sir?
I'm with you.
We had far-reaching recommendations. We did a lot of work. Professionals, architects, engineers, town planners, we were all involved in this thing that I'm talking about, the committee and the tribunal. And we came up with far-reaching recommendations Short term to be implemented within 12 months, medium term to be implemented within 36 months. This is the type of personnel that I'm talking about. We said that government should carry out audit of all structurally defective buildings. That is, there are some buildings that you start, that these buildings are about to go. And there are so many of them on Lagos Island, in Mushin, in Agege, all those places. We said that government should carry out audit of all the structurally defective buildings for appropriate action. Are you listening to me?
Yes, I'm with you.
And then the government should complete the action of forfeiture of collapsed building sites. Because one of the recommendations we made that came into law was that any site that there's a building collapse is to be forfeited to government. But the government will collect the building or the site and they will not make it public. Instead, make it public, because when people see that their sites are being forfeited to government and it is public, every other person will be cautious. Do you understand?
Yes, I get you.
Another short term, sir, wait. Another short term was that the urban and regional planning law that came up in 2010, based on that technical committee, should be effectively implemented in its entirety. We don't have an appeals committee that was set up. We don't have technical advisory committee to be set up, and then there is no drafting of the regulations that is pursuant to the law. And then you find out that all these people that just go about marking buildings, they just mark it to collect money. There's no real, what do you call it? That we are doing something not because we want to do it for results, but because we want to do it because of what they're going to get.
Okay. Let me pick you up on something. You are a professional, and you, of course, you've said that it is everybody's business and everybody is responsible. You talked about the kind of recommendation you've been giving, but look at here. I have one of our our viewers here is saying that it is because these buildings were built by developers that use inferior materials. Now, excuse me. I want you to get my point. What I'm saying now is that if you have been making recommendation, I have Dr. Bumi Ajayi here with me also, and then of course he shared your views on this same thing, that there have been recommendations and everything. But it turns out that if you continue to do this and nothing is being done, people would say that the architect, the town planners are the ones that are not doing enough. So how do you make the government responsible? How do you hold them, responsible for the kind of, recommendations you give to them? How do you make sure they are implemented?
Thank you so much. In fact, it is unfortunate that something like this has to happen for people to talk about it again. Well, the tribunal I told you about, we actually investigated 135 reported cases. There are much more than that. Between 2007 and 2013. And out of the 135 reported cases, not one single development had any registered professional involved. What is that telling you? And you are not supposed to be putting up a building or developing any site or any property without the relevant professional involved. Do you understand? So where do we go from here? If the professionals who want change to happen, they are talking and you're not listening. But when I told you that it is everybody's problem.
Yes.
It is everybody's problem. When you are building, when somebody is building something beside you, and you refuse to talk that there's this development going on, and I don't think that it is going on well, you should be able to talk. Even as the tribunal at that time, we found it difficult to have people tell us exactly what is happening in their communities. It was so difficult to get people to talk. So if a building collapses next door to me, I would have been seeing signs, but I didn't see anything. And when I say something, the government officials that come, rather than do the right thing, they'll be collecting money. So where do we go from here?
Okay, that's the question we keep asking. Where do we go from here? I'm afraid I'll have to let you go now, because we can continue to go back and forth on this, and unless the government is also saying what they know or what they don't know about this, maybe they will probably blame the architect and town planners also.
No, they can't blame architects and town planners, because architects and town planners and engineers, we have the registered ones who are supposed to do the job. So when the client doesn't come to you, who is registered, and they rather go to a quack in quotes, and then the government will now give them the relevant, the requisitory papers and all that. Well, I'm greeting Tampana Bumi Ajayi. He's the one, right? Dr. Ajayi?
Yes, yes.
Yes, and he's my ebo, and all that. But then, really and truly, we have to now rise up and do something and get the government to do what they're supposed to do, because this work is easy if only we are able to implement the existing laws and regulations that guide the built environment.
Of course, the doctor is smiling here though. Maybe he's going to react to what you just said here. And really, thank you very much for your time. And we really hope that something will be done differently this time, because we don't know what building is going next. Okay.
Helpful by little.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man. Doctor, you seem to follow that comment all through.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and she had said some very important things.
Oh, yeah, she's a very highly capable lady.
Yeah, she said some of those things you've said also, so it looks like it is the same across board.
She's a very capable lady.
Okay,
she's
so
very professional.
Okay, we still talking about the government. There's a line here between the government, the professionals, and let's say the people also. Because the proprietor of that school that was on that building, for example, said that he couldn't have left that building because there was no money to go to a better place. So they knew that place was not the best of places, but they couldn't leave. So this is a tripod now of the government, the professionals, and the victims eventually. So what are you going to say about this?
You see, one of the great. I have taken my time as I'm getting older to reflect a lot. Nigerians are basically ignorant, and they refuse to simulate about even the laws that are guiding them. They don't even know their rights. They have never even tried to find their rights. I'll give you from even the discussion. We listened to Attitude Mr. Ajayi very well. There was a committee set up by Governor Fashola under General Rees. Between 2007 and 2010, there were 135 cases of collapse in Lagos.
In 3 years.
They investigated 135. Not that the total that happened is 35, 135. Which means there were definitely more than 135 collapses in 3 years. They investigated 135. Resulting from it, they crafted a law. That law is of 2010. How many Nigerians, how many Lagosians have ever attempted to know what is in that law?
Who is going to make it available?
It's sold. It's government gazette.
Who is going to sensitize us on knowing that things like that are sold?
I was saying that Nigerians are so ignorant. Those are the findings of my reflection.
Doctor.
Now, just wait.
Okay.
You see, because we don't know their rights. For example, then since 2010, that law was made. There was supposed to be a regulation that would interpret how you do that, what to do with that law. That regulation is not there even 2019. 9 years after you make the basic law, the regulations that are supposed to be 2-3 days after, it has taken Lagos State 9 years, and the regulation is not in place. So what are we talking about?
Talking about people, and then the ignorance. There's a comment here, very interesting one, and you mentioned religion, you mentioned ethnicity, division, and the rest. There's a comment here. Someone says the parents who sent their children to school in that collapsed building were probably thinking, "Not my portion."
That's a good one.
So
I was just getting to that side of the matter. That okay, you see. If we all, I said ultimately government, I didn't say government alone, ultimately. Now, is there not a section in the Ministry of Education that it goes to inspect buildings that are going to be used as schools? There is. Did they go to inspect that building? Did that school has anything from the Ministry of Education? You see, as a parent, you want to take your child to a school, you should ask, is this school registered with the government? But people don't ask that question because they don't know. They have a right or a responsibility to do that. And as I talk about the ignorance, there are times you think people are just acting stupidly, but rather they are acting ignorantly.
Okay, let's say again that if you're just joining us, we are having a review of what went down yesterday at ITAFAJI when a 3-story building collapsed, and we have a lot of casualties, a lot of pupils trapped. A lot of them have also been, confirmed dead, and of course, the rescue mission is still ongoing there. And I want us to look at this from another angle here. We are going to be looking at the health safety, and I'm going to, as we speak, we'll be hoping to connect to somebody, a health safety consultant, and we hear what exactly is everybody doing, because now we have many angles to this. We have the health angle, we have the professional angle, we have the government angle, we have the people. If I have to be a landowner on the island, it is a pride that I own a building on the island, regardless of how long it's going to take. Not my portion. That is the hashtag that we should really watch. Not my portion. One interesting thing, doctor. Yesterday, some people actually gave this "not my portion" statement. A lot of people, because where we stood, the people that accommodated us to have an aerial view of that coverage, and people were jittery and everybody. And somebody said, well, we will just be hoping that it's not going to be our building that will fall next. We all know that we are not safe in this place. Okay, I have Samson Ajobiewe here on the line. Samson Ajobie is a health and safety consultant. Hello, Samson.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, you're welcome to Vanguard Live.
Thank you.
Aftermath of what happened at ITAFAJI yesterday, okay, we are looking at what we didn't know about the health and safety measure of that place, from the building and the rescue process. When you heard the news, what came to your mind?
Morning. When I heard the news yesterday, I was not too happy because I felt the responsibility of keeping our children safe is the priority of everyone. But school safety is not just about the violence control, because in many of our ways we share the same hazards that we share in construction sites, in industries, and other corporate organizations. Even also, we share same with the school's environment. But in schools, no matter how small it is, it's a small community on its own. So every potential hazard attached to a community is also attached to a school.
Okay,
and when you're talking about
Samson, there is something very, very strange or unique at the same time about that building. That building has a kiosk under. I think it's a 3-story building. We'll learn that it has a kiosk that is something that looks like a small shop. Then there's a resident also on the first floor or the second floor of that building. Then we have a school, all in one building. What is this? How safe is that?
It's very, very unsafe in terms of emergency response, because you don't expect a school to accommodate houses, kiosks, and other functions, and you still expect that school to be safe. If you want to reduce accidents, you should make it practical as much, not just having people around you in the same facility. Imagine when the incident happened yesterday now, I'm very sure there's no way they can account for number of people in that facility.
Of course, there's a lot of speculations about maybe little above 100
Okay, let's not even talk about the incident now. Let's talk about even rape or other threats in school. When you have clubs staying in the same facility, there's no way there will not be interference between the students or pupils in the same school and the people staying in the building. As far as you want to make money or maybe a business continuity, you don't carry on business continuity at the expense of people's lives. Now you are running the school, you are making your money, but you care less about what happens to people in your facility. Now we are seeing cost of accidents.
Samson, there's another angle to this, because when I saw the way the rescue mission was being executed, I was not very comfortable. That place is a very small area, and lot of crowd were on that ground. Everybody trying to have a glimpse of what is happening. Some, of course, were trying to also help in the rescue process. But when you see the way they were bringing out some of those victims and survivors from that building, it became very difficult, because those guys were not stable. You see them passing them all around, and you see in developed countries the way they hold them in steady position so that there is no shock or any things like that. How do we control crowds in during for safety's sake in an accident scene?
During emergency or in an accident scene.
Yes.
That is why I'm a trained emergency responder,
okay.
And we have a post in Lagos, emergency and crisis risk management institute,
okay.
And we're there yesterday to do what we can. You see, in a scene, in an emergency scene, on an accident scene, there are a lot of things that still happen. So when we have untrained or incompetent responder around, there's no way you will not have such. Out of empathy and sympathy,
yes.
You see people coming around, they don't even have experience on how to handle emergency, on how to handle injuries, on how to handle somebody that is fainted or fainting. All you just want to do is want to help.
But we see people.
During the process of helping, we may even have more sorts to injury. Trying to help people at the same time, sending them to their end place. That's why we need, when you check around yesterday, you will still police, you will still some security things. But they are not doing, because they also need to be trained on emergency response. Because if they don't know what to do at an emergency situation, they will allow these people to go in and even do more harm.
Something I would have to let you go now because of our time, and hopefully we are going to bring you to the studio on a full show where we talk about health and safety precautions during emergency and things to do. This is it doesn't look like what we can say in a short space of time. So thank you very much for talking to us on Vanguard Live.
Welcome.
Yeah, bye. So it is as he was saying those things, I keep imagining that in developed countries we also have crowds, we also have sympathizers.
Health and safety.
There's health and safety, and there's a lot of
health and safety education is not given in this country.
Yeah, okay,
and it's important all of us have, because we are at every point wherever we are it's a risk. The risk is even higher in this country.
It's really higher, and the more we discuss this, the more we see so many angles to this. There's also the psychological angle. Yes. What happens to the residents of those places? What happens to the people that have pupils that they sent to school? One woman had to beat her word to go to school yesterday, and that baby was trapped in that place. So what happens next time that a baby is crying and doesn't want to go to school? Would the parent want to force that baby to go to school, barring everything?
You can still look at many dimensions.
Many dimensions. So tomorrow we are going to be looking at the psychological angle of some of these things, and I think it's going to be a full program here tomorrow. And so we look at it, and just your final word on this before we go, Doctor. What a word for the government, word for the people also. Just before we leave.
You see, in the Lagos state government has gone 75% of the way. They should complete the 25%. And my advice to both the outgoing governor and the incoming, they should stop seeing every action in town planning as a money-making venture.
Okay.
The material testing laboratory charges 200,000 naira per floor to carry out integrity test, which means that type of building that fell, you ask them to go and cover 800,000, almost $1 million, to carry out structural integrity test. So where is the service that government is supposed to give us? So Lagos state government should give service, or like all governments in Nigeria, let them give service. And that's the number one recommendation that I have, that the material testing laboratory should be made to charge less, so that people will, of their own volition, go and carry out integrity test on their building. But with that amount they are charging, nobody will even answer them. That's one. Two, the ones the distressed building, the list of which they already have, let them revisit it and implement it.
Okay, thank you very much for talking to us. Before we go, we have a video from the Lasema boss. He was there on that site yesterday, Mr. Tiamio, and he mentioned some of the challenges. He mentioned some of those things you talked about
I watched
also.
it on television.
Okay, so we have the clip that we are going to play quickly on that, before we go. If we're ready.
There's the legal aspect of this thing that you're discussing. It is only the government who can give an order that the building is wrong. But it is also for us to give information to him to give that order. That is being done by Lagos Building Control Agency. I am in the wait for me to get an order to say move to so building that is effective structurally and bring it down. And then we will bring it. These are brand new equipment. Look at the excavator. It's less than 6 months. I'm 6 months. We just add new equipment to our fleet. But the truth is that our society must understand the fact that for every action government wants to take, it is for general, well-being of our people. Look at the number of people who are trapped in this building. Just take a look at the one behind it. That's also a building that is not strong from the physical look. And you also have pupils there in the morning. I understand it's also a school. This is just exactly like the one that just came down. If you come in here tomorrow and say everybody should evacuate, it is still 10% of boys who will say no way, like you do it. So I think we need public education. Yes. And then island is a very tight area. Before our equipment will come in, it has to come down from the truck, bringing it and then travel. And then this will also destroy it. If you have to travel, because so has a steel tire and then a wheel that is not rubber, the iron, it will destroy the road. So we want to minimize all of this as much as possible.
Finally, realistically speaking, how long more do you think that this such an evacuation will take?
Difficult to predict, but if it takes us till tomorrow morning to achieve what we want to achieve, to get to ground zero, and be sure nobody is trapped here again, then we will contribute to that.
What's your name and designation just for this program?
My name is additional.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Okay, that's the Lasaba boss, speaking on that place at the scene of that incident yesterday. And of course, he also mentioned in that video that everything will be done to ensure that the last person in that place is rescued, dead or alive. Okay, so Doctor, you mentioned before we took that video that the amount the government is charging for testing that a building, or material testing and the rest is high. What else can be done?
Yeah, government should license many more people to carry out the integrity test. I know University of Lagos does it, but the government departments try to run away. They don't want to accept the one that is not done by material testing. That should not be it. The people that are carrying out the test in material testing are engineers, and they're using. So there are other consulting engineers outside. All that the government should do is to ensure now the capabilities of the people that are going to be involved. Secondly, the equipments they have to do it.
Okay.
That's not fair. It's a standard engineering.
So if you have it, you have it.
You have it. So they should make it. You see, when competition sets in, the price will come down. And the general population should be encouraged to go and do an integrity test of their buildings.
Okay, that's it. You've heard all about that has to be said on it, and then of course we still have another leg of this program we'll take tomorrow, looking at the psychological effect of some of these things on us as a nation and as a people. Just as it is important for us to have our body test, we should have our building test also.
That's right.
And it is as important as knowing if we are going to sleep and wake up in that building tomorrow. Thank you very much, for coming here with us. We hope to see you again next time.
It's a pleasure. This is my first time here, and I think I've enjoyed my.
I'm not sure it's going to be your last. Just that we don't hope another building drops.
That's left to you.
All right, we'll make it happen. Thank you very much. That's all we'll take here on this program today, and then to come your way again Thank you for watching Vanguard Live.